Over the last few months during my absence, I spent my winter and fall watching the team behind Rainbow ripping robots apart inside a robot combat arena. And no, I wasn't watching Battlebots 2019 highlights, but instead, I was watching Battle of the Robots 2023, the largest heavyweight event in all of 2023 and the largest heavyweight event the nation of Russia has ever hosted. If you've followed the Combot Collective over the last half year, you know what we're talking about. Whether you have or not, come along as we break down the highlight robots, fights, and results from this exciting tournament, which may very well set up the future of the sport right here, right now, on the Combot Collective once again.
Welcome to the Combot Collective.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to a 2024 edition of the Combot Collective, bringing you, once again, everything you want to know from the world of robot combat, from the heavyweight class to the flyweight class, from Battlebots to the live circuit. Once again, here, as always, your host, Sterling Brown, a.k.a. Quarry300th on Reddit, SterlingTXTG on Instagram. You can check me out on both of those spots. And we're here. It's 2024. The 2023 rankings have wrapped, and we are moving onwards to a brand new year of robot combat. New NHRL competitions, new Battlebots competitions, new UK scene competitions. But that hasn't been the only thing going on in the world of robot combat. Oh no, especially not over the last few months. Yes, over the last few months, far away from the eyes of both casual fans and even some hardcore fans in both the USA and UK, was a huge 3-stage robot fighting championship featuring robots which have competed in Battlebots, Bitva Robotov, and even King of Bots. This event, creatively named Battle of Robots 2023, was hosted by the nation of Russia and would be the largest 250-pound robot fighting championship we'd see this year, while Battlebots was focusing on proving grounds for the entire year. And with it came some of the best production, passion, and combat we would see out of the heavyweight class this entire year. In total, over September, October, and December, we saw 60-plus robots vie for the first ever major heavyweight title to come out of the nation of Russia, and maybe more importantly, a prize of 6 million rubles, which translated to around over 60,000 USD, easily the largest cash prize we have ever seen in the sport, especially in the heavyweight class. And these prizes brew some really special moments and some really exciting battles. And today on the Combot Collective, we're taking you down to Moscow so we can break down all that you may have missed from this exciting super tournament, going over memorable robots representing all over the world, from Russia to India to China to even Kazakhstan, to showcasing highlight moments and fights you're going to want to check out in full after this video. Look at this as a little bit of a primer for some huge names you may want to check out for 2024, and a showcase of some of the most shocking robots on our TCC overall rankings list last year. We got 3 events in one video to break down here, so let's not waste any time at all. Go right to our new big screen as we talk about Battle of Robots 2023, starting with their inaugural qualifier event in the heart of the country in Moscow, Russia. Qualifier 1 took place on the 19th of September in front of thousands of curious and excited fans over the course of a single exciting day, and followed a fairly simple but rather unforgiving format for the newfound fans to follow. Straightforward, 24 robots were present, and all they had to do was win 2 battles to reach the December championship. The catch? Lose once and you're out. That's right, ABC era rules here were in play, with single elimination action all the way from round 1 to the very championship battle, which meant zero room for error for all of these teams, a lot of which had zero robot combat experience prior. And this did mean that there were a lot of robots which were certainly primitive in their design, with shades of the numerous undeveloped robots we saw during the first King of Bots season in China. So with that being said, we're not going to go over every single 0-1 robot which came out of these 2 qualifier events, but there certainly were quite a few which stood out, stole the hearts of fans, and were worth a look at given their potential futures in the sport. And I would say that crop starts with no better robot than Yene the Crocodile. While Death Roll has been the only crockbot of recent memory, that has recently changed with the birth of Yene the Crocodile, a slow, bulky wedge vertical spinner with shades of robots of the past such as Blood Moon and IG-88. Solid weapon, slow drive, but what really made Yene the Crocodile stand out was its team, as this robot was led by an army of gnome men. Yes, gnome men. Unfortunately though, the power of the Seven Dwarves did not help this robot, as despite its strong weapon, it simply could not keep up with the speed and aggression of Hypericum in its opening match, leading to a judge's decisions loss in round 1. Luckily, unlike a lot of robots we'll be discussing today early on, Yene did get a second chance to even out its record in a fairly underwhelming 4-way melee during the finals in an exhibition, where it defeated the likes of Diamond Warrior and the chaotic number 17. But now, from a pleasant surprise to a known quantity, we move over to Volge. We discussed Volge a little bit in our past Battle of Robots video. This robot is a part of the Weber army of robots, a faction of machines we'll be primarily discussing later on in the video, as all these teams' robots managed to reach the December finals except this one. Volge was one of very few new hammer/axe robots in this tournament and entered with the hype of being very similar to Thor, but ended up being a lot more like the fellow newcomer from 2023, Thunderbolts. This robot suffered the same sluggishness issues which Yene the Crocodile toiled with, but also had the added issue of being armed with a very lethargic weapon. This thing had some power but came down very slow and very steadily, much like the original versions of Thor from the early 2000s. This is always a disaster for hammer bots. No matter how strong the weapon, you end up just leaving yourself with plenty of openings for your challenger to take advantage of, and that is exactly what the Indian robot War Machine would capitalize on big time during Volge's only recognized fight, as War Machine wore the Team Weber robot down for 3 minutes, and that led to a very early exit for this robot Volge. 0-1 was not as shocking of a record though for Neutrino, a robot I nearly didn't include on here, but its backstory is quite neat nonetheless. This robot was presented and sponsored by SMP Russia, one of the top racing teams in all of the nation, and while this team seems to succeed in multiple classes of racing, robot combat is a wildly different motorsport, and unfortunately the engineers behind this robot, despite some good ideas, came out very unprepared and had a very unfortunate draw with, speaking of Team Weber, the team's flagship robot Weber. And when you face an opponent like Weber, it really helps to have a front wedge, something Neutrino was not armed with, and this left the vertical spinner to crash and burn, yellow flag, leaving the tournament 0-1 after a hard caution. Now, there were some other interesting round 1 dropouts from qualifier 1, such as Huntsman, a veteran Brit flipper that is also Kazakhstan's sole heavyweight, and number 17, a sporadic and chaotic Russian Tomb clone, which delivered 2 memorable but losing showings in this tournament. But these robots fell immediately to Lord of Fields and Sarkau respectively, 2 robots which went 1-1, falling in the second round instead of the first, coming only 1 fight away from qualifying for the finals, but still robots which were memorable nonetheless, as we now take a look at the former of these 2, with Owner of Fields, a very meta 2-wheel drive drum bot, which came from the university squad of Team Trimitrevetsky. It was a robot which took great inspiration from farming equipment of the past, as seen with its very unique harvester plow armed on the rear of the robot, acting as a spinner killer. And this robot got quite a bit of attention entering this tournament from Battle of Robots social media and from the team itself, who passed out many toy versions of the robot to numerous big figures running and attending this competition. This machine delivered on the hype too, ripping apart the veteran flipper Huntsman in its round 1 battle, taking its back armor clean off in a dominant judge's decision. But Owner of Fields' round 2 opponent, another flipper in Weber, proved to be much sturdier. This fight was back and forth, one of the closest of the entire second qualifier round, but in the end of the day, veteran driving power through as Weber managed to take advantage of multiple gyroscopic issues from Owner of Fields, allowing it to eliminate the promising farmhand in another judge's decision. Now, some robots like Ring Spinner VRP-23 and sluggish Axbot Pneumokraken weren't so lucky in their round 2 fight, suffering brutal knockouts after less than stellar round 1 performances. But in my opinion, no storyline at the September event was more of a heartbreak and a shock than the performances delivered by Sarkau and War Machine, the 2 Hindi robots at this qualifier competition. Entering this qualifier, a lot of eyes were on these two wicked vertical spinners as they both came from some very promising young teams out of the upstart robotics nation of India, which always did strong in these international competitions and always delivered massive weapon power. And, things really did seem to be business as usual for India as Sarkel and War Machine both had phenomenal round ones, with War Machine bullying the aforementioned Bulge and Team Prix's Sarkel obliterating number 17. But both these robots would hit a brick wall in round two when they challenged two of Russia's most promising upstart heavyweights. Sarkel was up first, challenging Adam, a veteran robot which was built in the exact same composition with a two-wheel drive body and a vicious spinning drum. And sometimes styles make fights, and this was the case here in a phenomenal mirror match that may have been the very best fight of this entire tournament. Sarkel dominated the first half of the fight, with strikes that mirrored that of some high-level Battlebots, and within just 30 seconds of the fight, we were seeing some smoke come out of the home nation robot. But Robot Combat is ultimately a battle of survivability, and it turned out that would be the secret weapon for Adam in this battle, as the second half of this match saw the spinning drum of Sarkel die, allowing Adam to slowly reel this one back, doing visible damage to the sides of Sarkel, and with 12 seconds left in the battle, Sarkel would end up dying on the ground, being saved by the bell here, but not by the judge's decision, as the robot originally built for RoboGames in Sarkel would be eliminated by the underdog Adam, leaving the impressive Drumbot at 1-1. Now we were down to the very final battle of Qualifier 1, and it was down to Team Phoenix's War Machine, a very strong robot coming from a less known but still very promising quantity in Team Phoenix. And after taking little to no damage against Volge, the team felt confident in round two, but certainly had their work cut out for it as they had to take on one of my favorite robots in this tournament, Wayside 23, the deadly Combot clone. Now we'll get into Wayside 23 later, but this round two battle ended up being 100% its showcase and its showcase alone here. War Machine showed some impressive survivability and resilience in this fight, but ended up just being impact after impact by Wayside 23, who delivered some of the only ceiling scraping strikes of this entire tournament during this battle. It would be a judge's decision, shockingly, but a unanimous one at that, as War Machine would exit Battle of Robots 2023, along with Sarkel, meaning that both of the strong and promising Indian machines in Qualifier 1 would fail to reach. But fear not, Robot Combat fans of India. When Qualifier number 2 took place in Perm just a month later on October 21st, we would see 3 more Indian teams enter this Battle of Robots arena, and 2 of them would even manage to reach that December finals. More on them later though, as we now move on to that second qualifier. In our opening ceremony, we would be blessed by the presence of the one and only leader of technology, which kicked off a qualifier bracket that was certainly built much more off of quantity rather than quality, with a whopping 34 robots entering and only 9 qualifying for December. Certainly some underwhelming new machines in the first round, robots such as Duber, Boson, Lawnmower, and especially Andromeda and Cyberzerk, who probably put together the worst fight in the entire sport's history during round 1. But not all these robots were big misses. We had a couple of hits in the very unique robots of Red Alert and Headliner. Red Alert was a fairly complex robot coming out of a relatively small team, and this machine, despite looking like a robot that was built for robotica, was actually armed with quite a few bells and whistles. Red Alert featured Omni Drive, pneumatic spikes, strobe lights, and 2 cutting discs, but these impressive effects did not lend it any support against the fairly meta Golden Dragon, an Indian vertical spinner which looked much more promising in its render during the application phase. Always a little bit suspicious when things like that happen, but I digress. Red Alert was impressive in one way, but Headliner showed promise in another form. This robot may look like a 1-to-1 remake of Iceberg from Robot Arena 2, but under the pickaxe and the bulky body of this Perm State University robot was an artificial intelligence system completely driving the robot itself, much like we've recently seen on Orbitron, albeit likely much more rudimentary. This made Headliner the only AI-controlled robot of this entire tournament, but ultimately this only led to a very slow round 1 matchup for it against Red Triangle, as it looked okay during the first opening 2 minutes, going 6 for 14 on strike attempts versus the slow but moving target. But the robot would abruptly begin to halt during the battle's final minute as smoke would begin to emit from Headliner, limping to the finish line and shockingly losing the battle via judge's decision in round 1. And this was not the only questionable judge's decision to come out of this second qualifier event at Battle of Robots. In the second round, we'd see two true veterans of the Russian scene also fall to some very questionable calls thanks to the very, very unique judging criteria this event was using. And one of these victims would be another Axebot in Newtel. This rustic renegade was the third rendition of a Rusty-esque Axebot we'd seen appear at Bit of a Robotop since the scene began, but the robot never really showed any true competitiveness in the sport until their round 1 victory over Terabot, where the third version of Newtel showcased some serious aggression and quite a bit of stank in that pickaxe. Unfortunately, though, it's round 2 battle against another veteran in Barracuda, despite showing even more aggression, albeit with a bit less control. Looked like a strong performance for Newtel, but the judges would not agree, siding with Barracuda, who was barely working for most of the battle. Even more heinous, though, was the judges' call against former Bitbot Robotov finalist Matanga, an old-school Tomb clone with some serious knockout power built in the year of 2017. In round 1, Matanga would rip apart the slow, brooding Kamaz in just moments for a fairly stress-free knockout, and looked to have another easy opponent in round 2 with RH-Bot, who much like Red Alert seemed far too ambitious for what he could actually do. And hey, this fight started off exciting with Matanga ripping away at RH-Bot early before one strike, not even 30 seconds into the battle, sent both robots' primary weapons flying in an impact with shades of Frostbite versus Surgeon General. RH-Bot was neutered and Matanga was left with its spinning bar dangling, and not much else really happened in this 3-minute window. But despite this, somehow, this would end up going in favor of RH-Bot, and this really shocked some fans online, as the much worse for wear RH-Bot would end up qualifying for the December finals, leaving Matanga out to dry. So after 2 rounds and 2 events of qualifier play, we were left with 15 robots from 4 nations all vying for the championship crown. But hey, we still have one more spot left for a championship 16. This final spot, a wildcard spot, will be decided through a fan vote, which actually kicked off when this tournament began all the way back in September. Every single robot from Volge to Neutrino to even Darkness was present on this vote, though the winner would end up being Hypericum, the Mo-style horizontal spinner from St. John's Wort College, which we discussed at the top of the video. Other robots which made up this championship field would be Honey Badger, the robot which originally halted Hypericum from advancing to the finals in a spectacular round 2 battle. Honey Badger was probably one of the most prepared robots for the entire tournament, especially given the fact they spent a lot of time in preparation practicing with Turbo Masha, another robot which qualified for the Sweet 16, a robot which actually comes from the very successful squad of Team SolarBot. We've seen this team succeed in the past with flippers, but this was the team's first time stepping out of their comfort zone, and despite a couple of reliability issues and Mahler dances, this full-body spinner would find its way to 2 straight wins alongside Honey Badger. Another robot which made it all the way to the top 16 would be a very special robot to me, Lonely Wolf. Lonely Wolf has been discussed on this channel in the past, and hails from the team which brought this entire championship event to our attention at the Combot Collective. This Turkish drum bot from Team Mirzus Robotic had fought in the past on TIFR with their first ever heavyweight, Raging Mustache, but had 0 success at all. And it was an uphill climb for this team, with sporadic appearances from then till now, as this team really seemed to have struck some gold with Lonely Wolf, a traditional and compact 2-wheel drive drum bot. Its run to the finals may have not been perfect, having to deal with drive issues in both of its qualifier battles versus Diamond Warrior and BRP 23, but nonetheless, it would qualify for December, as would, like I mentioned earlier, a couple of powerhouse robots from India. While War Machine and Sarkale failed to make the cut, one team we all very much expected to qualify for the finals no matter what was Team Blancabots, one of the very best teams to never enter the battle box. Blancabots has success in Brazil, China, Russia, and of course in its home country India, where entire parades have been held for the team in the past after major championship wins. Blancabots would debut the newest version of their veteran heavyweight Danaji, who was helped by a fairly easy round number 1 and 2 schedule of Drummer and Andromeda to reach the finals, perhaps a good thing considering the robot had some serious weapon issues during those qualifier battles. One Indian robot I don't think anyone expected to make it as far as it did was the phenomenally named Godspeed. Much like Golden Dragon, this robot looked a little bit more spectacular in its pre-event renders, but unlike Golden Dragon, Godspeed absolutely performed with one of the quickest drive speeds in the entire competition and a very competent spinning drum weapon with shades of robots such as Riptide. Another international robot and a favorite of many to win the championship was none other than Iron Scrap. This purple Minotaur-esque drum bot was the sole competitor representing China at Battle of Robots and was the last Chinese heavyweight to compete ever since King of Bots 2, which, funny enough, also featured this robot. At that event, this purple powerhouse took out popular robots such as Mad Catter, Deep Sea Shark, Black Rabbit, and even Tanxie en route to a 4-1 2019. Add two more knockouts from the qualifiers to that mix, and Iron Scrap was arguably the hottest robot to enter this event. But was it the most destructive? That title was highly contested, and only two robots entering this event held even a candle to that honor, with the deadly Wayside 23 and Daddy. Yes, that is the robot's name, Daddy. And it was also quite often what robots were calling it after three utterly insane performances in build-up to December. This robot, first in an exhibition at Qualifier A, destroyed not only Barracuda, but also the arena wall itself, as it shot an entire portion of the arena spike strip into the roof during an admittedly sketchy moment for the event. And then in Qualifier B, where Daddy actually competed, it would make an absolute scrap out of Boson before doing much similar to Golden Fury, albeit with a little bit more pushback. Its equally as powerful rival, Wayside 23, came from Turbo Mechatronics, a team that, despite being rookies, clearly knew what they were doing with a design that was a dead ringer of the former TIFR champion and Battlebots mainstay, Combot. And it would be one thing if this robot performed like a Combot at home, but no. This robot was the biggest menace during all of Qualifier A, making quick work of Marabe in round 1 before absolutely roofing War Machine multiple times during its aforementioned electric round 2 qualifier battle. The finals also featured two other robots that we brought up earlier in passing, Adam and Redhorn. Adam was in that great battle against Sarkel to qualify into the championship, but it was far from an underdog entering that showdown. The team behind Adam had been competing in Bitva Robotov since the tournaments began back in around 2016 to 2017 and had challenged robots such as Weber and Matanga in the past, but with a much more primitive design than what we saw during the qualifiers and finals at 2023. This vastly modernized version of Adam was a project a couple of years in the making, now boasting a sleek design and a great look, which only got better when the team showed up again for a December finals. Redhorn, meanwhile, an underdog in this bracket, much like RH Bot, was quite an interesting case. This robot looked like a wicked modernized version of Ronin with its crazy weapon and its massive treads, but not much was expected out of it, and not much changed after its hard-to-watch battle versus Buck in round 1, where multiple teeth on Redhorn's weapon went flying off. Despite that, Redhorn won the fight by KO and went to round 2 versus Pneumo Kraken looking much better, doing visible damage to the shoddy Axebot, knocking it out, and in the process managed to be the only robot in all of Qualifier 1 to leave with 2 victories by way of knockout. But what about the old blood and the recognizable robots coming out of Russia? Well, finally we have Team Weber and Team Energy, Russia's 2 longest standing and strongest teams, both with championships in Russia and televised appearances around the globe. Team Weber, who we discussed earlier with the robot Volge, has appeared at Robot Wars International Specials and even at King of Bots with their signature Brit Flipper Weber. And as scheduled, the ever-consistent former Russian champion, rocking a slick new livery, had again reached a top 16 in its home country after wins over Neutrino and Master of Fields. Surprisingly, though, joining Weber was a new robot on the team we didn't know about entering the competition, Kolobaka, the team's first ever kinetic energy spinner, which looked a lot more like a city bus than it did a robot. But despite the quirks, this robot did manage to advance to the top 16 off a couple of dominant wins as well, one off of Red Melnick and one in a 3-way melee versus Red Triangle. But if you're a casual fan of the sport, if there's any robot you are going to recognize from this event, it's going to be Team Energy's Iron Wind, the robot which once entered the battle box in 2019 going by the name Rainbow. Inside the battle box, this rainbow-clad horizontal spinner really turned some heads with a couple of solid wins over robots such as Extinguisher, Double Jeopardy, and Nelly the Ellibot. And despite nearly a 5-year pause of action, this robot did not lose a single step in its qualifier rounds, where it knocked out both of its challengers, Gladiator and Auxilium, in well under a minute, barely getting any screen time at all in the process. But one robot which got plenty of screen time after a handful of long, controversial battles was Barracuda. Now, one of the things that brought a lot of attention to Rainbow in 2019 was its team of primarily women's roboteers. Well, that portion of the crew had went on to take over their own robot for this event in Barracuda, a low-pressure purple and pink flipper, which itself had a past of competing on TV, having competed in China's Clashbots all the way back in 2018. Things did not look promising for Barracuda after a brutal exhibition loss to Daddy in Qualifier 1, but when it came to the fights that mattered, things picked up for the pink flipper. Barracuda bounced back strong by knocking out the sluggish Ural hero in short order, then won that previously discussed controversial battle versus Newtel. It wasn't the strongest showing, but it was enough to get the ever-popular women's team into the Sweet 16, wrapping up our 16 robot field with a fairly strong international bracket. In the round of 16, we predictably saw the demise of Red Horn and RH Bot pretty quickly into the tournament, but in two very different matters. Red Horn suffered a very tough draw against the wildcard Hypericum, whose horizontal spinner was at the perfect size and height to absolutely decimate Red Horn's weapon and treads, sending the dads with geese packing up fairly quickly into the tournament. But things weren't so cut and dry for RH Bot. In a battle of controversial judge decision winners, RH Bot would be steadier and more consistent with its weapon versus Barracuda, even managing to bust its CO2 tank late into the battle. But again, the judges would shockingly favor Barracuda here on aggression, which left the RH Bot team to attempt an appeal, but to no avail. Other results saw Denaji scrape by the full-body spinner Turbo Masha in a battle where neither robot was really working. Iron Scrap knocking out Honey Badger, who showed some proper resilience against the powerhouse Drumbot. Daddy shockingly being eliminated in round 1 after much anticipation against Godspeed in a heartbreaker where it did the thing after dominating early on. Adam won a respectable judge decision against Kolobaka, where Kolobaka spent most of the battle either upside down or weaponless. And Weber would join its teammate as a round 1 dropout, unfortunately, after a very disappointing draw against Wayside 23, who managed to knock out the fan favorite with just seconds left in the battle. Meanwhile, Ironwood would do the opposite, joining its teammate Barracuda in the quarterfinals after making short work of Turkey's Lonely Wolf. This left us with an Elite 8 featuring robots from 3 different nations, 5 of which representing the home flag of Russia, but never count out the international powerhouses, who quickly took up half of the semifinal positions with Iron Scrap and, shockingly enough, Godspeed, both making it look easy on the way there. Iron Scrap again looked as dominant as ever, out-drumming arguably the best drum bot Russia had to offer, Adam with a wall-propping knockout in under a minute, while Godspeed shocked the fan favorite Hypericum with a jugular sub-minute KO of its own, which left Hypericum with 2 less wheels than it entered the Elite 8 with. Godspeed had advanced, but shockingly the Indian powerhouse Blanca bots with Denaji would not, as the internal issues that plagued it versus Turbo Masha would plague it again versus Barracuda, allowing the flipper's slow and steady run towards the championship to resume. Finally, we had a couple of Earthshakers in Wayside 23 and the internationally proven Iron Wind, a true classic showdown of horizontal spinner and vertical spinner to decide the last semifinal slot. And after taking out one internationally recognized machine in Weber, Wayside 23 would do it again in even more dominant fashion against Iron Wind. There will be a fire at the end of this rainbow thanks to Wayside 23 crumpling the veteran, killing its weapon in 15 seconds before leaving Iron Wind with an internal battery fire, and that set us up with a fairly diverse Final Four. We had a veteran Russian flipper, a veteran Chinese drum bot, a rookie Indian egg beater, and a rookie Russian vert. 4 solid machines which all had earned their ways to the championship through various means, some more fortunate, such as we saw with Barracuda and Godspeed, and some through brute force, as we saw with Iron Scrap and Wayside 23, who much to all of our pleasure met 1-1 in the semifinals. And as you would expect, This battle between Iron Scrap and Wayside was thunderous and certainly did not end in a judge's decision, with the fight ironically enough giving us great shades of Minotaur versus Combot. Wayside 23 controlled the opening seconds until Iron Scrap managed to rip both of its front wedges off, and then it was all Iron Scrap from there, with the fight ending via knockout in its favor shortly after. The Chinese powerhouse was on to the finals, which meant the last standing Russian representative was Barracuda, and its fortunate run to the Final Four was about to hit a brick wall with Godspeed. It seemed like luck was on Barracuda's side once again at first, with no working weapon on Godspeed, but the Indian robot managed to outcontrol and outbully the Flipper for full duration, taking the easy judging decision and setting up an all-Asian championship on Russian soil. Wayside 23 would eventually claim third in an easy playoff battle against a worn-down Barracuda, but the focus was all on known commodity Iron Scrap and underdog Godspeed in the final two. Both these robots had superior drive speed and weapon power behind their 5-0 runs to the finals, but in the end of the day, one of these robots had a December championship full of struggles, from almost losing against Daddy to weapon issues in the semifinals against Barracuda, and that was the newer robot Godspeed. Iron Scrap, meanwhile, delivered 2 quick knockouts in its qualifier rounds and continued that trend in the championship, with only Wayside showing it any sort of kickback during this entire competition, and this would remain the exact same case here. From the opening buzzer, Iron Scrap did not give Godspeed a single moment to breathe, as within less than 30 seconds, Godspeed was in a heap in the corner, boasting no working weapon with visible damage all over the robot, and within just 32 seconds, the Godspeed team had tapped out, and for the first time ever, we had a Battle of Robots champion, Team ROC's own Iron Scrap. This robot had been phenomenal since it debuted all the way back in 2019, and since its sole appearance at King of Bots 2, every year you would hear the same fans, myself being one of them, clamoring for Iron Scrap to be a potential international entry into Battlebots. But this was a thrilling return to form for it here, and now I truly think that you cannot deny the ability of China's Iron Scrap against any sort of robot. This may be the best robot we've seen to come out of this country since Railgun Max or 2 Barbecue. It easily outclassed every single robot it faced in this competition, and after such dominance, prize money, and glory, the next step for a robot like this, in my opinion, just has to be Las Vegas. In all, even though this tournament primarily took place during my break period from this channel and Robot Combat mostly as a whole, I could not get enough of this event throughout the fall and winter of 2023. I mean, was it perfect? Not at all, no. I feel like the repair time between some rounds could have been much longer, and the arena is in some serious need of upgrading after some scares with robots such as Honey Badger and of course Daddy. Maybe more exhibitions too? It was a serious shame to see some robots such as Darkness and Red Alert have only one fight, and that was that. But that being said, the robots and the production was a huge step up from what we saw in the past with events from this nation such as Bitva Robotov and Brombot, with a spectacular stage presentation, unique theatrics, and a passionate team that is all in on robot combat. Numerous wonderful new robots had hit the scene from this event, like Wayside 23, Godspeed, and Daddy, while just as many veterans such as Adam, Weber, Rainbow, and of course Iron Scrap had all rejuvenated their careers and are firmly back in the scene scope once again thanks to this competition. There is all but confirmed to be another one of these championships happening in 2024, something to seriously look forward to. And who knows? I know politics are always going to come up, especially when it comes to Russia, and it might be an issue for these competitions, but who knows? We may eventually end up seeing teams from the US and the UK competing here, just like as they did in China soon enough. I would certainly love to see it. And as I'm posting this, we have another Battle of Robots organized events coming up in literally days. On the 24th of February, across 3 days, we are going to be seeing an event titled the Robot Battle Super Final, which gives us the top teams from the Battle of Robots Championship Tournament out of every top country, machines such as Hunt, Wayside 23, Barracuda, Denaji, and of course Iron Scrap, with heavyweights also debuting from nations such as the UAE, Ecuador, Chile, and Belarus for the first time ever. This tournament will be the first ever of its sort since the third World Championship hosted by Robot Wars all the way back in 2003. And with so many unique nations of varied experience present, from Battlebots level machines from Russia, India, China, to first time ever nations such as Belarus, Ecuador, and UAE, very interested to see what UAE is going to have. It's going to be a phenomenal experience. I really do think so. I think you're going to want to check it out. It's going to be on vk.com. I'm going to have it linked in the description below. They do a secondary stream that's done exclusively in English, so if you're worried about language barrier, listen to that stream. You're not going to feel left out as to what's going on during the event. We're going to be discussing it on the Combot Collective on RCT, and I hope to see all of you guys reacting to it too. Before we go, thank you so much to Team Merzus Robotic for bringing the casual scope of fans into this competition, Battle of Robots. Who knows that we'd be talking about it right now if you guys never posted about it on Instagram. And a huge thank you to Madiator, Bolt from the Blue Fan, and Clone Killer, all fellow fans of International Robot Combat that followed me alongside this journey of Battle of Robots 2023. Madiator was very helpful in getting a lot of these videos on YouTube. Bolt from the Blue Fan and Clone Killer, both very savvy with Russian language. They were able to translate a lot of the things on the Battle of Robots website. Couldn't have done this without them, so thank you to those guys so much. And thank you all so much for watching this video from the Combot Collective. Another breakdown video, but I'm doing it a little bit differently. Took some inspiration from some sports channels I like watching for this video. I really like what we did for it. We're going to see how it comes out, the final version. Hope you guys like the new intro, the new outro. But yes, this has been the Combot Collective talking about Battle of Robots 2023. Huge shout outs to Iron Scrap, Godspeed, Wayside 23, Barracuda, and all the promising robots, which we're hopefully going to be talking about quite a bit for years to come on this channel. But now, as we wrap up, thank you for watching the Combot Collective. Please follow us on Instagram, on Facebook. Join our Discord server. It's where all of our video uploads go down first. All of our news gets posted first. Check out the YouTube page, which you're at right now. Ring the bell icon, hit the subscribe button. Videos are going to be coming out, maybe not as consistently, but they're going to be of more quality. I'm super excited about that. We're still going to be doing Robot Combat tonight. We're still going to be doing live streams. You're not going to want to miss a single thing we're doing here on the Combot Collective. So stay tuned for more, and we will see you next time for more Robot Combat goodness on the channel.
This was the Combot Collective. Find us on Instagram and Discord.